What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video. But before I dive into the video, I want to give a special thanks to all of you out there who are subscribed to the channel. We recently hit 1K subs, which is a really huge milestone. I wanted to hit it by the end of the year, and we made it. So thank you all for subscribing, and I will be having some special videos coming both later this week and later in the month to sort of celebrate this. And one of those videos, if you've been following the channel for a long time, is a janky burn mirror. As I said that I do that for 999 subs. So I've got that in the works. But before I dive into the janky burn mirror, I wanted to feature a burn match, a normal burn match on the channel. And Vampire format introduced a lot of new burn tools to the burn deck. So I figured that now would be a perfect time to dive into this before showing off some janky burn mirrors later in the week. So here before you, we have a Vampire format burn deck, and I'm not quite sure about the build of this. I'm pretty satisfied with it overall. I think that, playing this, it felt really, really slick and really good. But there are some changes that I might potentially make in the future. But, this deck is extremely hard to play, and so I'm not sure if, my gripes with the deck are just through me misplaying it, or if my gripes with the deck are just because of the build of it. But it will take more practice to actually, really get this deck under my belt. I'm sure that people who've played Burn in GOAT know what I'm talking about, because this is starting to resemble a GOAT format Burn list. So let's just dive in to the card by cards, talk about what makes this deck different from previous Burn decks that I've featured on the channel. So the main difference here is the inclusion of Gyakugiri Panda and Ojama Trio. Now, Ojama Trio is super big for the burn deck. Basically, it's a trap card that says special summon 3 Ojama tokens to your opponent's field in defense position. They cannot be tributed for a tribute summon, and each time one is destroyed, its controller takes 300 damage. So this is insane because it buffs up your Just Desserts, it buffs up your Secret Barrels, and also it will buff up your new card, Gyakugiri Panda here, which says increase the attack of this card by 500 points for each monster on your opponent's side of the field. When this card attacks with an attack that is higher than the defense position of your opponent's defense position monster, inflict the difference, add battle damage to your opponent's life points. So it does piercing damage. But this thing with 3 Ojama tokens on your opponent's side of the field goes 2300 attack. Attacking into an Ojama token will deal 1300 damage plus the additional 300, so 1600 damage total, which is the fifth of your opponent's life total. And that's not even considering if your opponent has additional monsters on their side of the field. So this combo is extremely potent, and combined with Just Desserts and Secret Barrels, it can just burn your opponent to death very quickly. Of course, we're playing a bunch of other cards to facilitate this as well. We're playing Triple Desk Koala, a way to defend yourself and also deal additional damage to your opponent's life points. We're playing Double Morphing Jar to draw into our combo pieces. The idea of this deck is basically like setting a bunch of traps, firing a bunch of traps, and dealing your opponent a ton of damage, but that does leave you relatively low on resources. So having Morphing Jar in the deck really helps here. And this is actually at 2 because we're using the February 2004 TCG list, so you can change that on DB to make it show how it should actually be here. And so we are able to play 2 copies of this, and it really helps out a lot. We've also got Fiber Jar because, again, we are going low on resources, and resetting the board with Fiber Jar can be pretty good, especially because Fiber Jar doesn't reset the damage. So if you're getting in for a ton of damage with your opponent, burning them out a lot, and then you're flipping up Fiber Jar to reset the game state, you get back powerful burn traps, and you can go in for more damage again. We've also got Sangan, Sinister Serpent, and Witch of the Black Forest. Sangan and Witch can search out pretty much anything you'd want in the deck. Sangan, of course, is the best searcher because it can search out Gyakugiri Panda, which Witch can't do, but Witch can search you into things like Fiber Jar, Morphing Jar, or Sangan. Serpent also does come up as just a jump blocker occasionally, and also a way to get more value off your Morphing Jar. For the spells, we've got Confiscation, Duo, and Forceful Sentry as our hand rips. Honestly, this is the part of the deck that I'm least sure about. Playing the Morphing Jars, these cards can be a bit rough because if you have Morphing Jar in these, you don't necessarily want to go for the hand rips, but also you kind of do want to go for the hand rips to prevent your opponent from disrupting your combos. So it's kind of a weird situation for these to be in. So I think in the future, I may actually cut some of these to make way for other cards that are a bit more useful. But, they are extremely powerful, so we are playing them in this initial version of the deck. We've also got a Dark Hole, Graceful Charity, Mirage Nightmare, Monster Reborn, Triple Mystical Space Typhoon to pair with the Mirage. Also stops things like Royal Decree, Pot of Greed, Raigeki, and that's it for the powerful spells. I mean, this is just a set of basically the most powerful spells in the game all together here. and so that's why we're playing them. But the real key of this deck is the trap lineup. We've got a Ceasefire, Triple Just Desserts, Ojama Trio, Secret Barrel, and Nightmare Wheel as our main burn cards. We've also got Magic Cylinder and Ring of Destruction as well, although these are a little bit more situational, and they don't really pair with the sort of Just Desserts, Secret Barrel, Ojama Trio combo. Nightmare Wheel is, I think, pretty important here to stall your opponent a bit, stop things like, DD Warrior Lady from attacking in, and just keep dealing damage to your opponent every turn if they can't out it. And of course, Imperial Order is great at shutting off your opponent's spell cards. For the side deck, I'm kind of iffy on the side deck, but basically, I have a ton of cards in here to deal with Royal Decree specifically. Now, you can, of course, play Double Snare as well, but I felt like Double Snare is a bit too iffy. I mean, maybe it's good because it also hits Jinzo, so you get more utility out of that. But I think just generally, I'd prefer just Giant Trunades here, send back your opponent's traps, and, reset your own board as well. So this can be pretty good. And also, once you've sort of set all your trap lineup, go for the combo. There's not really much your opponent can do about that, and you can just kill them potentially out of nowhere there. We've also got Harpy's Feather Duster and Breaker as well to deal with Royal Decree. Although I'm not really quite sure about Breaker. Maybe I'll side out for like a Double Snare instead. But Breaker is a body on board, and it can clear Decree, so that is pretty nice. We've got Triple Scapegoat here paired with a Cannon Soldier if we want to get a bit more defensive and also have the Cannon Soldier deal another avenue of burn. Combined with Scapegoat, that can be 2,500 damage, which is nothing to scoff at, especially when the deck is consistently putting out a fair amount of damage through things like Just Desserts on an Ojama Trio. We've also got Triple Poison the Old Man. This can be good both against like Scientist decks. It can also be good against decks that are playing Royal Decree because this can sort of mess with the maps a bit, and it is a spell, so it will get around Decree. And we've also got Triple Torrential Tribute in case your opponent's on a bit more of an aggressive deck. This can be good to bring in just to clear away their monster that they're summoning out. We do have a full fusion deck here, although we're never really going to go into it. We don't really have any ways to take control of our opponent's monsters, so we're not like going to get a Scientist most likely, but it's just good to have in some very, very edge scenarios. And this is just the standard sort of toolboxy fusion deck that I've mentioned in a lot of my other vampire videos. Although I don't actually have a Dark Flare Knight in here. There should be a Dark Flare Knight in here, but the extra deck is unlimited at this period in time, so you can just proxy that out basically. But that's going to do it for the deck breakdown here. I think this deck is really, really sick, and I think that, I'm maybe not as good a player as this deck warrants, but, I'm practicing. I'm trying to get better with it. So let's dive into some games and see how I do. Okay, first game we got is against Aratos, a frequent guest on the channel, a very, very good duelist in a variety of DM era formats. So this might be a tough one, especially given that, we're not the most fluent with this deck, not the most skilled with the deck. So we got to sort of figure out how to play it as we go. We draw Morphing Jar here, so we could just, opening move set Morphing Jar set for pass. But I think it's better just to wait on the Morphing Jar, maybe sort of not telegraph to them that we have the Morphing Jar set, hit some good cards out of their hand. So we're going to open with this Witch Black Forest set, and then we're just going to set our 3 traps, pass back to them. If they do have Harpies, then we can chain Ceasefire and Ojama Trio, so we get some value off of that. Not the best, of course, but it is something at least. So I'm okay doing this. And they're just going to set a couple and pass back to us as well. We draw Nightmare Wheel too, which is very good. So I'm just going to, keep those cards coming, set Nightmare Wheel, hopefully set up some burn plays next turn. Although Nightmare Wheel is a bit more awkward into a Harpy's Feather Duster, and they do indeed drop the Harpies now. So they might have been waiting for us to commit more to the back row, figuring that our initial back row were just chainable. And if so, that did work out for them. So maybe we shouldn't have set the Nightmare Wheel. We had the Magic Cylinder to deal with aggressive pressure anyways, and saving the Nightmare Wheel is pretty important. So I think in the future, it's good to keep that sort of thing in mind. You don't necessarily want to commit all back row to the board, even if you can get some burning on field right away. So we do just chain Ceasefire and Ojama Trio at least. Unfortunately, the Ojama Trio tokens will not count for the Ceasefire, but this will at least deal 1,000 damage to our opponent and negate that Spy. So they won't be able to get another Spy out from deck. They do have DD Warrior Lady, though, so that will take out our Witch here, cut us off from that search. And they're going to attack in with the Gravekeeper Spy here. We draw Forceful. We could use that, and we are indeed going to use that. We just need to make sure our Morphing Jar actually goes through here. We could have just, played it a bit greedily, set the Morphing Jar, set Reborn and Forceful Sentry. But I do really think that if they clear the Morphing Jar through, like, Raigeki or something like that, we do just lose the game. So I think we do need to do this. So we fire the Forceful. That does go through, and we see that they've got a Raigeki, so I'm very glad I went for the Forceful Sentry here. We're just going to send the Raigeki. We could send the Fiber Jar, but I figured, you know, the Fiber Jar will probably get discarded out of the hand by Morphing Jar, and even if they do set Fiber Jar, we're in a pretty good spot here, so I'm not, like, opposed to hitting into the Fiber Jar. So we just shuffle back the Raigeki, set a Morphing Jar, set a Monster Reborn. They MST the Monster Reborn in the end phase there, and bring out a Zambira. So, you know, we will be able to draw 5 cards here. Unfortunately, we will take 1200 damage, but we get rid of the Fiber Jar. We get some good cards in hand, and having Gyakugire on a board that has 5 monsters is really nice. That Gyakugire will have 3300 attack. They're just going to set 2, fire Mirage, and pass back to us. Now, they will get to draw off that Mirage. We don't have any way to stop it. And we have a couple options here. We could potentially set, like, the Serpent or the Koala. Setting the Serpent is actually kind of nice because they're probably going to attack into it with Zambira. Drop Zambira down to 1700, and then we could set the Koala to sort of wall up against them. However, by setting the Serpent, we do take 1200 damage here. So it's a bit awkward. They are also, like, consistently drawing cards off the Mirage. We do have Imperial Lord to stop something like Nobleman or Raigeki. And they already have used up 1 MST, but they might have more, so it's a bit iffy there. So we're just going to fire Graceful just to see what we get, to see, you know, if this informs us to make a different play potentially. We also have the Serpent to discard off the Graceful, so that's pretty good as well. We're going to pitch this Serpent, pitch a Morphing Jar, as we're both pretty full up on cards in hand, so I don't really feel the need to go for Morphing Jar, especially because we can't get all these monsters out of our hand very easily. I mean, I guess we could have discarded them off the Graceful, but I don't really think that's worth it. We're just going to go for a Gyakugire because we have another Gyakugire in hand. Zambira can't attack directly, so if they do clear the Gyakugire, this is essentially the same as, like, setting, like, a Sangan or something and, you know, passing back to them. It's like somewhat different because we've got the Koala here. So, you know, if we had set the Sangan and they attacked him with Zambira, and then we got Search, then, you know, they wouldn't be able to get through Koala. So maybe I should have gone for the Sangan set instead. But I also do want to set up, like, Mirage here. And, yeah, I think that having, well, I don't know. It's a bit iffy here. I don't quite know if this is the right play or not. We just attack in to the Gravekeeper's Spy, trying to get in for a lot of damage here. And also, if they do bring out, like, Exiled or DD Warrior Lady to clear our Gyakugire, you know, the Zambira can't attack, so, or attack directly, that is. So I figured this is a fine move to do. Unfortunately, they do have the Mirror Force to clear the Gyakugire there. And so we're just going to set this IO, fire the Mirage. We were actually debating about, like, keeping it set as a bluff because we already do have 3 cards in hand that we can't really get rid of. But, you know, I think it's fine just firing it now. And they're going to draw for turn there. They'll be able to attack in for 12. We do get to, you know, pick what they discard because they did draw 2 and they don't have an out to Mirage. We hit Raigeki and Snatchsteel. Snatchsteel wasn't really that useful for them here, but Raigeki could have been pretty good. We do draw 1 off Mirage. We draw MST, which is kind of funny. They attack in for 1200. We'll take that. And main 2, they're just going to pass back to us. They do draw 1 off the Mirage. Here, we do fire MST on our Mirage here because we do not want to lose Justice Urge. Now, I do make a bit of a mistake here. I don't add back the Serpent, which I should have done. I wasn't initially planning on adding back Serpent because I was initially just planning on letting the Mirage go. But we drew such a high value card that we couldn't let that go. So, yeah, I made a misplay not adding back the Serpent, but I am just going to go for the aggressive Gyakugire plan here either way, so it wouldn't really matter as much. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I should have just set, like, Sangan, or, you know, if we had added back Serpent, maybe I should have set Serpent. Just to play around Torrential a bit, especially given we have the Justice Urge now to deal 2500 damage to them. So that probably would have been the better play. I think I got a bit greedy going for Gyakugire here. But yeah, we get a little bit punished for that. They deal 900 to themselves because the tokens all die, and then we'll set this Justice Urge pass back to them. So yeah, I think honestly, and this is again my inexperience, I sort of got dazzled by the possibility of going for the Gyakugire into the Spy, dealing a ton of damage that way. But realistically, the smarter play would have been the safer play, and I didn't go for that, and I do get majorly punished for that here. So I think it's just good to keep in mind for playing this deck, both for myself in the future and also if you're watching this video, potentially thinking about picking up the deck for yourself. These are very, very good things to know. They're going to fire MST on our Justice Urge. We could chain IO to that, but I want to save IO for a more high-impact spell. Given they don't have any cards on their side of the field now, I'm okay letting Justice Urge die. It's kind of sad because if we do draw another trio, then Justice Urge would be pretty good there. But ultimately, I don't think it's the worst to let that die. They're going to try to go for Monster Reborn on Witch here. We do just fire Io because I figure Io is pretty good in that situation, and they'll attack in for 1,000. We don't want to let them get Witch access and draw into some other stuff. We have to think about whether we want to let Io lapse here. It does cost us 700 to keep it up, but if we let it lapse, then they get to draw 3 off Mirage, which is a bit worrying. I do just let it lapse here, and maybe this was a bit of a mistake. I just didn't want to take any more damage. And I do think that if they draw a bunch off Mirage, we can just set Deskawalla and be fine that way. Also, if they use up an MST on Mirage, then our Nightmare Wheel is live. But setting Deskawalla into this board is kind of awkward too, because they could just tribute Exiled Force and pop the Koala, which obviously isn't an outcome we want. So they're going to draw 3 off that Mirage. We set a Sangan, set a Nightmare Wheel, pass back to them. And the reason we do this is we want to bait them into using the Exiled Force. Maybe we should have set a Serpent instead, though, given that, you know, if they pop that with Exiled Force, then, you know, it's still a waste, but they also know about the Serpent, so, I don't know, it's kind of awkward, but I think getting the search off Sangan is good here either way. They don't have an MST, though, so they will lose 3 cards here, or they either don't have an MST or they're not using it right now. If they're saving it, then that's very good play into Nightmare Wheel. They've got this knock, though, so that will clear our Sangan, unfortunately, and nothing we can really do about that. If we had kept the IO up, then we would have been in a different situation, but unfortunately we did not. They draw 4 here off the Mirage, and we kind of have to make a tough decision here. We draw Dark Hole. Dark Hole on this board, it doesn't really get much value here, but we do want our Deskawalla to stick, so we might just go for the Dark Hole to clear the Exiled, and then let our Deskawalla get a flip effect, potentially. I could also just summon out the Deskawalla and attack into the Exiled. That might be the better play. A bit of a tricky decision here. I just go for the Dark Hole to get the burn effect off the Koala. I do think that maybe it would have just been better to summon the Koala, attack in to the Exile. The only thing that really punishes that is like Ring, because people aren't really playing like Sakuretsu Armor. So if they ring the Koala, that's bad, but at least Ring is gone. I've got the Nightmare Wheel to stop whatever else they might bring out. I can Dark Hole main 2. And yeah, that might be the better play there. But it, you know, I went with what I went with, and yeah, I think maybe I get a bit punished for that. Anyways, it looks like they still are not outing their Mirage, so they're going to discard a bunch. Search out something with Rhoda. Oh, it looks like they don't have any targets left, so I feel really good about that, actually, because if they don't have many monsters here, then they might not be able to stop us. They're going to bring back a DD Warley with Call of the Haunted here, attack into Deskawalla. We could have potentially Nightmare Wheeled that just to stop it from attacking in the future, but I feel fine just letting them hit into the Koala. If they do want to banish this, we've got Serpent to serve as a chump blocker if they bring in another monster. If they don't, then, you know, they're taking 1,100 damage, so I feel okay about that either way. And yeah, they're going to choose not to banish that. They do have Forceful, though, so that will get rid of the Serpent here. We draw a Geometria, which isn't that bad. They're going to draw 3 off Mirage here. We're going to set this Geometria, pass back to them. They add back Serpent in standby phase just to make the discards off Mirage not as bad. And we're going to let them keep those 3 there. So they pitched some good ones. Ooh, Tribe would have been pretty bad for us. They're going to bring out a Gravekeeper Spine. It looks like they do indeed have the ring for the Koala here. So that will indeed be the end of the game, as this Nightmare Wheel can only stop one of these attacks from going through. So yeah, that's not quite going to cut it. I think if they didn't have ring, we might have actually been in a winning position from this point. But yeah, I mean, there are a couple other outs that they could have potentially had, like Dark Hole could have cleared the board to get in. Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a tricky situation from here. But still, you know, I think that if I played that a little bit better, then we actually might have won this one, because I made some pretty major misplays that could have potentially cost us the game here. So, you know, good to sort of analyze these replays, look at where the misplays happened, especially if you want to play a deck as tricky as Burn, to sort of just be thinking in the future, like, okay, how can I be better with this deck? You know, what did I mess up here that I might not mess up in the future? And so, you know, that was a bit of a rough first match for us, but we do have game 2 here, and I do sort of go all in on siding. So I bring in like the triple Trunades, I bring in Breaker, I bring in Harpies, just to prevent them from being able to use like Royal Decree. I think I side out some of the hand rips, not all of them. I think I also side out the Nightmare Wheels. They're probably going to bring in more spell and trap removal. I leave 1 Nightmare Wheel in, I'm pretty sure, but I do side out 2. So I think I side out the 2 Nightmare Wheels and maybe all 3 hand rips. I definitely side out a couple hand rips, but I don't remember if I set out all 3 or if I leave Forceful in. Because Forceful doesn't cost you life points, so it's like okay to leave in. It's kind of awkward against a deck that's playing Rhoda, though. Okay, I guess I leave in some of the hand rips because I've got Comfy and Duo here. But we're about to see why that might not be the best option. We draw 2 here off pot. We draw Morphing Jar. Now, we have a bit of a decision here because we could go for Comfy, see what they're working with, and then set Morphing Jar as well. So that way we save Duo for after they've triggered the Morphing Jar, and we can rip 2 cards out of their hand. But it's kind of awkward because we'd like to save both of these hand rips for after a Morphing Jar activation. But our hand doesn't quite accommodate that. We'll be losing a fair amount of cards here, especially if we do want to go for the Mirage in conjunction with the Morphing Jar. So I think what I'm actually going to do here is I'm just going to fire the hand rips and then save the Morphing Jar for later. Because I've got Mirage to refuel my hand. I've got Sangan to set instead. It's just like really awkward here. And this is why I think in the future I will probably cut some of the hand rips. Because like with the Morphing Jar, I think Morphing Jar is such a powerful draw engine for this deck that is necessary. But it really plays poorly with these hand rips here in a lot of situations. So yeah, I think this might have been a bad sort of side decking choice. But anyways, since we've got these 2 hand rips, we're going to fire them right away, see what they've got. And we see that they've sided into a fair amount of spell and trap removal as they pitched a Dust Tornado from hand. They've got another Dust Tornado in their hand as well. So we're actually going to take the Rhoda, just deprive them of any monsters here. We see that they've got Raigeki and Dust Tornado left. We can sort of play around that a little bit. The Dust Tornado will not help them against Mirage here. So we're just going to set the Double Just Desserts, fire a Mirage here, pass back to them. If they do use Dust Tornado on a Just Desserts at some point, that would be kind of awkward for us, kind of unfortunate. But I think this is probably the best play. We could have also set the Sangan. You know, if they draw Knock, at least we have another card in hand to sort of bring out and attack in. But I think just summoning it, like, plays around a bit more. It also baits them into summoning out a monster on field, which, you know, pairs with their Justers a little bit. So, yeah. And they do indeed summon out a monster here. They summon Tribe, attack into the Sangan, and we will just get a search here. We're going to search out a Sinister Serpent, as we are going to be discarding off this Mirage. We drew 3. We really want to keep at least one of these Ojometrios. It kind of plays awkwardly into Tribe, but, you know, if we can fire Ojometrio, that just gets 4 monsters on their side of the field. Justers will then deal 2,000 damage each, so this can cut down their life points by half, which is really, really good for us. So I figured, you know, we want to sort of pad our hand a little bit for the Mirage play. Unfortunately, we don't draw an MST here. So they will pick 3 to discard. They pick both Ojometrios. That's very unfortunate. They also pick this Monster Reborn here, so we won't be able to bring back these Sangan. That's really rough. We really do want those Just Desserts to be online for Ojometrio. But yeah, they Dust Tornado our Mirage, which makes a lot of sense. And they're going to Raigeki our Serpent here. Attack in for 16. We will take that, and they'll pass back to us. We draw Giant Grenade, which isn't the best right now. But we're just going to set a Desk Wall. Hope that walls up a little bit here. If they commit another monster board, that would be nice, but they're just going to attack in with the Desk Wall here. We'll deal 800 plus 200 from the attack, and they're just going to set 1 pass back to us. We draw Fiber Jar, which is really, really good. We do want to pull off the Fiber Jar a little bit later. We could actually go for the Fiber Jar now, just to get things back, but I think we're in an okay position. We're like relatively stable, and I want them to like pitch for the Tribe to get rid of the Koala, potentially pitch things that could deal with our sets. So that's why I'm summoning or setting out the Serpent to sort of bait things that could deal with our set Fiber Jar. They're just going to attack in to the set though, so you know Fiber Jar would have been pretty good there. We will just add back the Serpent, and now I think we will just go for the Fiber Jar play. So we set this MST, set the Fiber Jar there, pass back to them, and they're just going to attack in. So on attack deck, we're just going to go for these double Just Desserts. We've got the MST in case they've got a Royal Decree to chain to these, but it looks like they do not. So they'll take 1,000. Fiber Jar will shuffle everything back into the deck. And we are a bit lower on life points than they are, which is unfortunate. They also do get sort of the priority here to do things. They haven't normal summoned this turn, which I think was very smart of them. But I do think that like we kind of had to do that because we didn't really have much in hand that could actually deal with a Tribe. Tribe is really, really rough for this deck. Shuts off your Ojometrios. Like all your stuff are beasts basically. So like 1 pitch off Tribe can be really, really valuable for your opponent. But our opponent's just going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw Harpies, which is pretty nice for the future. We're just going to set this Disc Wall, set 2 Ojometrios, set an MST, pass back to them. I figure if they've got Dust Tornado, that's okay, because we're not really going to be able to use both these Ojometrios with the given board state as is. So I feel like it's fine if they do have a Dust Tornado there. Unfortunately, it's a knock. So maybe I should have just gotten aggressive on the MST in case it was like a bluffed knock or something. But yeah, it's going to hit our Disco Wall, get rid of the other Disco Walls from deck. And we really wanted that Disco Wall to stick as we are in a very precarious position. And if they are able to get attacking into our life points, this could be really, really bad for us. They're going to flip up a Gravekeeper Spy. We're going to chain an Geometry to that. So that way, after the other Gravekeeper is summoned, they can't really do anything more on this board. But we are going to be taking 2,400 here, which is really, really rough. If they've got like, a ring, then we're very, very close to death. And they're going to set one in the end phase. We're just going to MST that just in case it's another knock. We draw Forceful so we can sort of get a hint at what they're playing and to sort of like inform our play here. So we're going to get to see their hand. DD Warrior Lady, Hades, and Change of Heart. This is kind of awkward for us here. I think we do... It's really awkward, but I think what we have to do is we have to get rid of the change. And the reason for that is if we commit our Gyakugiri Panda to the board here, if we like attack in to a Spy, the next turn they can summon out DD Warrior Lady, hit into Gyakugiri, attack in for 1,200 to finish us off. So we don't want to do that. But if we just summon out Gyakugiri here and attack, and they like hit in with Spy to clear up a monster zone, then they can Change of Heart that Gyakugiri and tribute summon out Hades. So that would be really bad for us. We also can't set the Gyakugiri in case you just summon out Hades, using one of these as a tribute anyways and attacking over it. So I think the only real play that we have to shuffle back here is the Change of Heart. So that is indeed what we do. It takes a bit of thinking to actually figure that out, but I do think this is the correct play. We're just going to summon out this Gyakugiri as well, and then we're just going to think about this a bit, but we do not attack. We also don't commit this Harpies. No need to play into a Harpies of their own. They are just going to switch the monsters to defense, pass back to us. We draw Dark Hole, which is not the most useful for us here. We're just going to set that as bluff, pass back to them. We figure, if they clear their own board here, or if they clear our board, then we lose here either way, so we don't really care if we lose the Dark Hole here. We draw Mirage, though, so that's really good. We're going to fire that, set the Harpies, pass back to them, and we draw 4 off the Mirage. Now, unfortunately, we've already gone through 1 MST, but we do have 2 left in deck, so hopefully we can, draw into that and not just bleed out cards here. We also draw Serpent, which is very good off Mirage as well. We say to them, pick one to keep, and they allow us to keep this Gyakugiri, which is honestly pretty decent. We're going to summon out Gyakugiri here, and, we have a bit of a choice here. We could just leave the board as is, which, again, is preventing them from doing anything. But if we attack in here to both of their Spies, then they could clear like one of our pandas with something like DD Warrior Lady, right? But then we still have 1 panda left, and we can attack into one of their tokens and then fire on Geometry just to completely lock out their zones for the future. Now, of course, we could also wait to draw into some of our more back row, like, Just Desserts or Secret Battle, etc. But we don't have an out to Mirage yet, and we could just potentially keep bleeding these burn cards to the graveyard every turn. So we have a couple options here. Also, if they do draw something like Raigeki, we just lose the game as well. So we don't want sort of that situation to happen. So it's kind of tricky, but I do think we have to get a little bit aggressive here. The only thing that like super punishes this is if they have like Tribe Infecting Virus, as they can bring out Tribe Infecting Virus and pop like our pandas as well as their Ojama tokens. But like that's a one of, and so I'm not like too concerned about that. They also haven't searched it out. So I feel like this is a relatively okay play to do. They could also potentially have Change of Heart and then bring out Hades, which would be kind of annoying. But then our Gyakugiri will go up over Hades, so it's not the worst thing in the world there. So yeah, I think this is ultimately the best play we can do here. It's playing around a little bit more, I think, than just waiting. It's really tough to say. Like, this is a very, very crucial decision in this game. I think it really will, like, determine the outcome of this game, depending on what our opponent has. So I could definitely see people, doing something very, very different here. But let me know in the comments what you think the best play was there, because I'm honestly still not sure. And as you see here, we do draw 3 off Mirage. We don't draw an out to it, though. And they do indeed have the Tribe in hand, so they will be able to win the game here. They will be able to also, take 900 from that, dropping down to 3,000. But yeah, this is very awkward. They've got Reborn as well, just to play around like Saku, I guess, or Nightmare Wheel. But yeah, they will be able to get in for well over lethal damage here, as we don't have anything else to do with that. So kind of unfortunate. Maybe I should have just waited, because like again, if we had kept like the Just Desserts in hand, for instance, or Bring Destruction in hand, then we could have potentially gone for like lethal damage at different points. Yeah, I really don't know there. Very, very awkward situation, regardless of what we actually chose to do. But again, I'm trying to learn with this deck. I'm trying to get better at it because I do think this deck is really, really sick. But it does take a lot of skill, a lot of practice to actually get right, as any player of the deck in GOAT will tell you. And we are approaching the point where this deck does look a lot like its version in GOAT. It's playing the Gakugiri Pandas, playing the Ojometrios, the Justicers, the Secret Barrels. Like, it's really, really approaching that GOAT Burn deck. And so I think just like how Burn can be good in GOAT format, I think this deck can be very, very good in Vampire. And I'd even maybe hazard to guess that it might be tier 1. It will take a lot of practice and a lot of like skillful players actually playing the deck to actually prove that. But I do think that, with enough skill and enough grinding and enough optimization of this deck as well, I think this deck could easily become tier 1. But this wasn't the only match that I played with the deck. I feel like it would have been a little bit disappointing if it was. So we actually got another match as well. So let's dive into that now. Okay, we got our second match here against Colgate, and we are going to be diving into rock, paper, scissors. We do lose the rock, paper, scissors, unfortunately, but that's not a make or break for this deck. So I think this can be fine, but oh man, this opening hand would have been really good. Confiscation plus duo, that is really, really nice. Unfortunately for us, we will not be going first here, but they don't have any hand rips, so we do keep the Confi duo, so that's pretty good. We're going to fire that Confi just to see what they're working with first, because then we can rip their entire hand apart with Duo if we so choose. We see they've got a Vampire Lord and a Giant Rat. Now, we can't really deal with Vampire Lord. This deck didn't really play many ways to stop it besides, like, Nightmare Wheel. So, yeah, I mean, I think we have to hit out their entire hand here with the Duo, because they could just tribute out the Vampire Lord next turn. It's kind of awkward. We do go down to 6,000 here. But I do think it is the right thing to do. We're going to set a Desk Wall, set this Ojometry, pass back to them. Now, if they do have Revival, that's awkward. But a lot of the Revival for, like, zombie monsters is, like, Book of Life. That does need a monster in our graveyard to work. And we don't have a monster in our graveyard. And with this Desk Wall, hopefully we'll be able to wall up a bit and prevent them from getting that sort of thing in grave. They're just going to set another, pass back to us. We draw a Morphing Jar, which would be pretty good. We're just going to set that Morphing Jar, pass back to them. They do have Call to bring back the Vampire Lord here, which is a bit unfortunate for us. We don't have an easy way to clear that. But in standby phase, at least we can lock their entire board with these Ojama tokens. So they are indeed going to clog up the entire board that way. They've got Witch. They will be able to attack into both their monsters on field here. And unfortunately, they have a Skill Drain. So Skill Drain will shut off our flip effect monsters. So yeah, now we have really few ways to actually deal with that Vampire Lord under Skill Drain. Skill Drain is kind of rough against this deck. It does cost them 1,000, which is nice, but we really need to draw something like Nightmare Wheel. That's really our only out to Vampire Lord. They also top deck the Raigeki here, which is very unfortunate. We would have been able to protect our life points a little bit longer, except for that Raigeki. So yeah, that's rough for us. They attack in for 3,100 here. We draw Just Desserts, so at least that's something. We have to Dark Hole the board here. And you might think that this is just the end of the game because they get to search off Witch and Vampire Lord will come back. But we do have this Forceful to shuffle back that Sangan into the deck. We'll set this Justicers, pass back to them. They do get Vampire Lord back in the standby phase. It is a mandatory effect. But I forget it's mandatory, so I'm like, oh, if they're not going to do it, I'm not going to remind them. But it is mandatory, so it is a responsibility of both players to actually remember that this, does come back. But yeah, I forgot that it was mandatory. I didn't forget about the effect. I just didn't tell them. But yeah, I think we're probably cooked here either way. We're going to set this Desk Koala. They're just going to attack into it with the Pyramid Turtle. Take 600 here. They'll pass back to us. We're drawing more burn spells, so maybe we're not quite as cooked as I think. Yeah, we're getting close to lethal damage here. So maybe that Vampire Lord misplay did cost them. They're going to reborn that Vampire Lord to hit over the Desk Wall here. Oh, they've got Sangan, so that will indeed be the end of the game. Just Desserts will deal 1,500 to them. Yeah, so that's 3k off the Just Desserts. And then they've got 7 cards, so that's 1,400 off Secret Barrel. So that'll be 4,400, so not quite lethal damage there. So unfortunate to see. But, we were dead there if they had brought back Vampire Lord either way. So we were losing game 1 there no matter what. Skill Drain is a really awkward card, but luckily the cards in our deck are sort of suited to deal with it after siding. We've got Triple Trunade. I don't think we bring in Breaker because that's bad against Skill Drain because it won't get its effective pop. We do bring in Harpies though. I think I do side out the hand drips here. We are going first though, so maybe I keep some in. But Nightmare Wheel is a must include in this deck because it does stop Vampire Lord. It's one of the few things that actually does. So yeah, we need to keep that in. But I think other than that, we just bring in like the True Nades, the Feather Dusters, things like that. So we draw a decent opener here. We draw the Nightmare Wheel in the opener, just a way to deal with that Vampire Lord. So we're just going to set a Desk Wall, set a Ring, pass back to them. We figured they're probably on more spell and trap removal, so we don't want to go all in on our back row here. And yeah, they'll probably commit a monster board, so then we can actually set like our Justers, our Ceasefire, etc. to potentially deal a fair amount of damage there. They're going to go for Pot of Greed here, draw 2, and they're going to think about this a bit. Set 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow, setting a ton here, passing back to us. Now we can feel more comfortable just setting all of our back row here. So we just set the house. We also set a Space Typhoon. Maybe we should have actually made room to set 2 Space Typhoons, because if they've got like double decree, then we can't actually, you know, deal with both of them, so they will be able to stop some of our traps. So maybe I should have set the second Space Typhoon here just in case, but they're just setting more as well. We're feeling really good about this. We'll set the Sangan as well. Pass back to them. This is a 2,500 damage Ceasefire here if we choose to do it. They're going to attack in with the Giant Rat. We do fire Ring on the Rat, though. I think I also should have chained Ceasefire here. I think this was probably the most high-value Ceasefire we could have gotten. This would deal an additional 2,500, dropping them down to almost half their life points. And we don't really care too much about the Koala effect here, as it would only be like 800. I guess they could get more cards in hand later. But yeah, I'm getting a little bit greedy here. I figure they'll probably also have to commit another monster board later. So yeah, I think I just misplayed that. I think I should have just gone for Ceasefire. But it is what it is. They're going to go for Change of Heart here. Tribute out a Hades after seeing that we've got a Witch here. And now they'll be able to attack in the Sangan and prevent us from getting the effect. We do have Nightmare Wheel to try and stop that Hades. But unfortunately for us, they do have an MST there to clear the Nightmare Wheel. And now we're in a pretty bad spot. We do get off some damage from the Desk Koala and the Witch attacking into it. But, you know, we could have gotten so much more damage off the Ceasefire earlier. They do have Mirage, so we will just pop that with MST. We don't want them to draw into more outs to our deck. Although we draw Secret Barrel, so maybe that would have actually been pretty good. We're just going to switch to the Witch Defense, set this MST here. They're going to attack in to the Witch here. We just let that go through because I want to bait them into setting more, committing more to board to make the Ceasefire even better. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw another Gyakugiri. We're just going to summon that Gyakugiri in attack here. Because in calculating, I do think that like it is very likely that's a Pyramid Turtle, but if it is a Pyramid Turtle, the game state will say the same in terms of the number of monsters on field. So this is just dealing an extra 400 there, and potentially buffing up our Ceasefires. Ceasefire will then be 2,000. Just Desserts will be 1,000, so that's 3,000 total. 3,400 dropping down to 17. So yeah, and then Secret Barrel, they'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then they'll draw another to 7. That's 1,400 damage. So that's only 300 off. So I figure it's worth just going for this. We do fire the Ceasefire here just to confirm that it is a Pyramid Turtle, and we'll attack into that, letting them get a Vampire Lord out from deck. But again, I think the math here is on our side. They can't kill us next turn, but we can deal you know, a fair amount of damage here with the Justers and Secret Barrel. So I feel relatively safe doing this. They're going to attack in to Gyakugiri there, deal 650 off that, and then attack into the Desk Koala, clearing that as well. Main two, they're just going to set one, pass back to us. We draw Nightmare Wheel, which is very, very good. We're going to set that, pass back to them. I don't think we're at risk of death there, and if they commit another monster to board, then that's 1,500 off Just Desserts. It is 1,600 off Secret Barrel, so that will indeed be the end of the game. So I feel relatively safe doing this. It feels awkward not to commit a monster board as a defensive tool, but I think we're in like the point of the game where we're just trying to win. So we'll take 2,000 off that. They do indeed get to send off Vampire, so they choose Trap. We're just going to send a Nightmare Wheel here. Nightmare Wheel doesn't deal instant burn damage, and I figured, you know, if they've got MSTs, if they've got decrees, then Nightmare Wheel is not really going to be that useful here. We use a Nightmare Wheel on the Hades. They think about that, and that is fine. They go for Call here, and they're going to bring back a Giant Rat. They're going to attack in with Giant Rat here. We fire Just Desserts. That's fine by them. So we fire a Secret Barrel, and that will potentially be the end of the game. But I do think I misordered this a little bit because I wasn't thinking of a counter trap they might have, which is Barrel Behind the Door. So Barrel Behind the Door does, you know, deal us the damage that we would have taken, or that they would have taken off Secret Barrel. So I think, honestly, I should have fired the Secret Barrel first, asked if they had a response. If they didn't, then we'd fire Jet Search. So they'd be taking the 1800 instead of the 1500 here. Now, they could have just, triggered the barrel behind the door right away yeah, on the Secret Barrel, and it could have ended up the same outcome. But if this did change the outcome, I think that, it could have actually ended up mattering here. But anyways, we will take that 18, and then we'll take another 14 off the Giant Rat attacks. We're down to 750, but I feel pretty good about this. Gekugiri will be buffed up fairly well, and Monster Reborn will allow us to bring out another Gekugiri if we so wish. We just have to do 700 damage, so we've got the Gekugiri there, buffing up to 2300. We'll attack into the Rat, and that will indeed be the end of the game. So very, very close game there. I wasn't considering Barrel Behind the Door being brought in as a side deck tech, but it really did potentially cook us there. So for game 3, we definitely are off of the hand rips now because we're going second. But I think I'd keep the side deck tech largely the same. Again, I've got the True Nades in there. I've got the Harpies. And I think that will deal with skill drain hopefully pretty well. We are going to be going second here as we did win game 2. And this is a pretty powerful opening hand here. Our opponent is going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw Ojama Trio as well, so this is just getting better and better. We're going to go for a Graceful Charity here, just trying to dig deeper in our deck to see what our first turn play should be. And we actually have a very interesting decision here. We want to keep MST and Mirage because those pair well together. We want to keep Ojama Trio and Gekugiri because those pair well together. And Nightmare Wheel and Secret Barrel are both also extremely good. So I think actually the picks here are Desk Wall for sure, but also Pot of Greed. We've got Mirage to draw into our deck deeper anyways. So I think the pot isn't really the most valuable thing here. And yeah, we're just going to go for this. So kind of wild discarding pot off Graceful, but I do think that was the right move there. Standby, that will be fine. So we do draw 4 here. And I feel very good about that. They're going to go for Pot of Greed of their own, draw 2. Fire a Change of Heart on our Panda. And, nothing we can really do here will change the outcome, but we could have potentially chained Ojama Trio to prevent them from showing another monster on field. I don't really think that's worth it. I think the big fear here is if they tribute out like a Vampire Lord or something like that over our Gekugiri. But they're just going to attack in directly with the Gekugiri, so this gives me some hope. But then main phase 2, they are going to tribute out this Vampire Lord. Set 2, pass back to us. In end phase, we are just going to fire a Secret Barrel here. Then chain Ojama Trio. We do want the Ojama Trio online now. We also want to do this before like a Decree can get activated because we want to use our MST on the Mirage. So I just go for this while I can. And this will also buff up the Gekugiri to major, major heights here. So they're going to take 2,000 off that. And we fire MST on a Mirage there. And we actually have a couple different choices to make here. We could potentially fire the True Nade to insulate our Gekugiri Panda. That might be the right move. It also turns back on like our ceasefire and some other stuff. We can also, go for True Nade here, clear their back row, reborn out something like the other Gekugiri Panda in Grave, get in for a lot of damage that way. We can get in for 2,600 plus 2,100 over the tokens. And we've also got ceasefire as well with 4 effect monsters on field. So yeah, I think that actually is the move. I think we want to go for True Nade here and just do that because I think that will win us the game. Unfortunately, we go for Panda instead. Now, I think that it wouldn't have actually mattered because they've got Imperial Order here. So they would have just fired that. But I do still think that should have been the right play to do. Just firing True Nade here. We unfortunately don't have a way to stop the Imperial Order, but I do think it still would have been good to go for that lethal push. Unfortunately, we don't. We just summon out Gekugiri and we attack into the Vampire Lord, trying to clear it before it can be cleared with like an effect. Unfortunately, this is a bit of a misplay. I think I should have actually attacked into either their set or one of the tokens because we do know that they're on skill drain. And I figured since we didn't see it game 2, maybe they sat it out. Unfortunately, they are still on it. So yeah, that will unfortunately stop our Panda, drop it down to 800. And yeah, we will take 1,200 there. We're in kind of a rough spot here. We're going to set IO, we're set ceasefire, and then we're just going to pass back to our opponent. We could have brought back something with Reborn, but we don't really have anything engraved that stops a Vampire Lord on this board. So we want to save Reborn for later after we go for like a True Nade. They're going to flip up this Pyramid Turtle here, attack in for 12. We will take that 12, but on the Vampire Lord attack, we will go for a Nightmare Wheel here. Targeting the Vampire Lord, that will go through. So now in our standby phase, they will take 500. We draw Morphing Jar, which is pretty nice, but not under skill drain. So we're just going to set the Morphing Jar, set the Monster Reborn here, pass back to them. We could have fired the True Nade here potentially to get cards in their hand to potentially discard off Morphing Jar. That might have been the play. That actually probably would have been the better play. I just wasn't thinking of it. But yeah, we instead just set the morphing jar here. I think I honestly forgot that they've got skill drain up to stop the morphing jar from using its effect. But yeah, they're gonna go for Raigeki here. We chain Imperial Order, they chain MST on our Nightmare Wheel. Again, I think, you know, I probably should have saved Imperial Order on the Raigeki, because Raigeki on our set is not that bad. It doesn't really do anything. It just blocks the Pyramid Turtle attack, which we don't really care about. We do really care about them MSTing this Nightmare Wheel, though, and getting in for more damage. So, yeah, that's pretty bad for us. They attack in to the set with the Vampire Lord. We take 1200 here anyways. We don't actually draw off that. This was a mistake off my part. I forgot the skill drain was up, negating the Morphing Jar. It was somewhat late at night, so I wasn't necessarily at my mental peak here. And with a deck like Burn, you want to be at your mental peak. I let the IO lapse, and I do make another misplay here. I go for Harpies instead of Trunade. They know about the Trunade in hand because I pitched it off the Morphing Jar. Of course, you know, that was a misplay. They wouldn't have known about it here, but I think the Trunade is just the better option. But I go for Harpies instead. They've got IO, so yeah, it's really, really rough for us. Yeah, so they let the IO lapse, and they're just going to attack in. For 32, we drop down a fair bit. And I feel very, very scared here. We draw Sinister Serpent. At least we can go for the Trunade now, bounce their cards back to hand, and we got Reborn to bring back Yakagiri, deal a ton of damage. And actually, this is indeed the end of the game. I don't quite realize it at first. So, you know, initially I'm like, oh, I'll just attack into the Vampire Lord here. But actually, you know, in doing this, I get to thinking, I'm like, wait, is this actually the right play? And because this is a casual game, I'm just like, can I change my attack target? My opponent's very gracious. They say, sure. So I take that back. Instead of attacking into the Vampire Lord, I attack into a token. Now, you might be wondering why this is. Well, the tokens have 1,000 defense, so this will be 2,300 plus 300 for the token's destruction effect, dealing 300 damage. So that'll be 2,600 to their life points, dropping them down to 1,900. If we then set Sinister Serpent, fire ceasefire in their standby phase, that will indeed be the end of the game. So, yeah, this is the correct play to do, attacking into the token instead of the Vampire Lord. And yeah, so very, very close call. We got down to 400 life points ourselves. And so, you know, it definitely shows that some of the wins off this deck can be very, very close. But I think that it shows how powerful this can be, as our opponent was at like over half their life points. We just killed them with that Trunade. So Trunade, I think, is a very, very essential side deck tech in this deck. And I think it really showed its power there. But yeah, they had Barrel behind the door as well, so Trunade can also get rid of that too. So very, very good games here. And I think that this second match really shows how this deck can do very, very well, even against a deck that's a bit of a tough matchup for it in the form of like skill drain zombies. I think that, you know, with further play, further practice, and further optimization of the deck list, this deck could easily become tier 1. It felt really, really powerful just playing these games, even though I did misplay a lot. But sort of watching back these replays, checking the misplays, and sort of trying to improve from them is the best thing you can do when playing a deck like this. So I highly encourage people out there to try out this deck. I think it's a lot of fun. You know, it is a bit degenerate, but like, I'm a degenerate. If you're like me, you'll enjoy this deck quite a bit. So I hope that you enjoyed the video as always. Be sure to leave a like down below and also comment on what you think of this deck, whether you agree that it's like tier 1 or if you think that I'm actually overhyping it and that it's actually like tier 2 or below. Also, be sure to subscribe if you're not already. I'd really like to reach 1,100. That's the next goal I have. Just trying to keep marching upwards and getting this community even bigger. So head on over to the YGO from Zero Discord server if you want to play in any of the formats that are featured on the channel. And until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.